Hello and welcome back to KXAN Plus. Thanks so much for joining us here, whether you're watching us live through our new KXAN Plus streaming app or even our social media or website. Thank you for being here. We have our Nick's First Warning weather segment with our KXAN Chief Meteorologist, Nick Bannon, to talk about some relief in sight for Central Texas.
Yeah, we've had so much heat lately that everyone's sort of wondering, all right, when's it going to start feeling like fall again? And I know our mornings haven't been so terrible lately, down in the 60s, even some 50s. But the lack of heat relief in the afternoon has been super apparent. And that's all I hear about now is when are the 90s going to end more consistently.
And we are here to say that they're almost over, right?
Yeah, it looks like some changes next week should bring in more consistent temperatures with highs in the 80s instead of the 90s. Now, they're still going to be warmer than normal, but it is going to be an improvement over what we've had so far. So we wanted to give you that first warning in more of a positive sort of warning way that some hope for cooler afternoons and even cooler mornings maybe on the horizon as well. Do you like the sound of that?
Yeah, I do. And I have been hearing a lot about cold fronts this week.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so cold front, we've got the potential for one this weekend. There's some question marks as to just how far south it reaches, as to whether we can truly feel some of the mini benefits of it, meaning our high temperatures may drop a few degrees. That would be about it. But another cold front coming next Tuesday into Wednesday may bring us more of a pronounced impact. And these cold fronts are basically boundaries, the leading edge of cooler air coming in, usually from the north or northwest. Now, sometimes you can get a cold front coming in, and you don't actually feel cooler from it. That's because these cold fronts often bring drier air with them. And if that drier air comes in real quick, and then we have a lot of sunshine that follows, then that drier air is still easy to heat up. So you can actually have high temperatures a little warmer after a cold front sometimes. So they're not always cold. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Earlier today, I spoke with Kristen, and she kind of gave me a little rundown of the 7-day forecast. She showed both cold fronts, but she specifically told me to ask you about the second one because the first one is not going to be as fun.
Yeah, the first one is what drops us just a few degrees, if that, Saturday into Sunday. So that second one is the potential difference maker that we've all been waiting for because we've had such a long stretch of heat. Let's just dive into how long it's been since we've had highs below 90 degrees in Austin. And the last time we had that
been a while.
Yeah, September 7th. Doing a little math, that was 38 days ago. We've even had some, at least one triple-digit day in this stretch too. So the days since highs were below 90 in Austin, 38 days, believe it or not, that September 7th, we had highs in the 70s, which feels unusually cool, but we had rain that day and a lot of clouds as well that kept the temperatures down. Didn't have a lot of rain, but we had some rain that day. So we are overdue from cooler air. In fact,
rain, right?
And rain, yeah, although we're not super excited about the rain chances here over the coming week. We're also overdue for some even cooler nights. Now, our nights have been nice lately, 60s and 50s. But in Austin at Camp Mabry, we have not dropped below 62 since summer ended and fall began. Even as summer was ending, we had some mornings drop down to 62. But that's the coldest it's been since last spring was 62. And we hit this coolest morning on a couple of different dates, September 9th, 27th, and then again on October 11th. We may be down there again tomorrow morning too. But no 50s.
But coming soon. Right?
Yeah. Well, we think maybe by next weekend, not this weekend, next weekend, we may get some 50s. The typical first 50s of the cooler months coming after the hotter summer months is September 27th. So that's around the time that we usually get our first 50s in the morning. So clearly we're overdue here by a few weeks.
For sure. You just mentioned something about the cold front, or the first cold front we're really not going to feel it. It's going to feel cool, but not cold. Why do we call them cold fronts if they're not really cold?
So they're boundaries between different types of air masses, and that air mass may bring a wind shift from ahead of the cold front. You usually get a south wind or a southeasterly wind. And then behind the cold front, you get a north and northwesterly wind. and you can get that subtle change in temperature. Sometimes you can get a big change in temperature. So it's not necessarily defined by a temperature drop everywhere, because you may not see the temperatures drop much from one day to the next, even if you had a weaker cold front in the middle. But you usually get at least that wind shift to come out of the south and southeast and then move to be out of the north or northwest with a cold front, even if it doesn't get that cold. So certainly other parts of the country often feel more of an impact of each time the front comes through. But here locally, especially sort of in this time of year, they don't always, even if they just barely move through the area, they don't always bring the type of temperature relief that you look for. As we get deeper into fall and into winter, our cold fronts are usually more impactful, but even then, not always. So sometimes we'll put the cold front on our 7-day, and you'll see the temperature go from 88 before the front to 89 or 90 after the front, and be like, well, why is it getting warmer after the front? Oh, it's because you get that northerly wind that dries the air out, and that drier air is easier to heat up. And then you end up with hotter temperatures after the front than before. But you usually get some other changes, like the humidity drops, the wind changes direction, and that sort of thing. So they do mark a presence of a different type of air mass, but it doesn't usually or always necessarily bring you the type of relief that you want.
And these cold fronts, whether they're coming from the east, the south, the north, the west, they have to travel far to get to us here in Central Texas. Is that also a factor of why it doesn't feel as cold for us than it
No,
for
it's
others?
more the strength of the front, and they don't come in from the south or east usually. Sometimes we can get a northeast cold front. Those are called backdoor cold fronts, but they're usually coming from the north or northwest. Fronts that come from the south and southeast are typically warm fronts that are ushering in warmer air from the south of us. So it doesn't necessarily, where these fronts are coming from isn't necessarily showing you how strong they may be or not. It's more the division of those types of air masses as to whether it's a strong cold front that brings a big switch in temperatures, or whether it's a weak front that only brings a subtle change. But you mentioned a little earlier that second cold front of two that we may see over the next week, and that's what we really wanted to focus on as far as giving you the first warning from a positive sense about a consistent break in the 90s. Now, we may actually drop out of the 90s in Austin at Camp Mabry tomorrow. It's borderline. We do expect some extra clouds around that may prevent us from getting into the 90s tomorrow. But what we're talking about is more of a consistent break in the 90s. Not a one-day thing, but potentially for several days in a row,
Moving
we
forward.
may see temperatures a little cooler in the 80s. So this is looking to be early to mid next week that our second front arrives, Tuesday into Wednesday. And then the beneficial cool down will kick in the middle of next week and then to follow. So this should affect us all. This means that we're generally thinking highs in the 80s starting around Wednesday of next week. And remember, we're still a week away from this, so there could be some minor
Changes.
fluctuations in the intensity of the front and how long lasting the impacts may be. But highs in the 80s would be a nice change for us. We haven't had consecutive days in the 80s here since, months ago. But lows may dip into the 50s. I don't think that's going to be right away. Some of the signs of the nights in the 50s in Austin at Camp Mabry would be around next Saturday. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday, the morning of Saturday morning around October 25th, possibly as early as the Friday morning, the 24th. So we're talking more than a week away now.
Like a chilly Halloween week.
Yeah, I mean, so Halloween week, and now you got me getting out my calendar here. So if we're talking about some cooler air coming in for next Saturday, Halloween, coming in mid to late next week. Halloween is the following Friday. So we still have a week to go. It is very possible, mind you, that while we're looking at some more consistent temperatures away from the 90s, at least initially, it's certainly possible we're back up to the 90s by Halloween. So we don't want to be promising a cooler Halloween just yet.
Just a little short break of the 90s.
Yeah. Well, at least that is what we're saying. Several days in a row of not 90s is what it's looking like would arrive later next week. So that's that's that. This is the cold front that we think brings that change, arriving Tuesday into Wednesday of next week. There's some computer model differences regarding the arrival time and a day or two of differentiation there between maybe a early Tuesday arrival or an early Wednesday arrival instead. I chose this particular computer model because I think it's a good blend of some of the earlier computer model solutions that we've looked at and some of the ones that are a little slower than that.
Is that a low pressure system right on top?
Yeah, so the low there around Chicago, and then the trailing cold front that brings some rain out ahead of it and along it. Our rain chances next Tuesday into Wednesday, though, are only 10%. So it's hardly, at least for now, consistently showing rain for us. What we're a bit more confident is the temperature change that may come with it. So there's cold front number one.
Not too cold, but cold for us here in Texas,
colder
right?
For what we've been used to, for sure.
For sweater and shorts type of weather.
Yeah, and what you can get ahead of a cold front is something called compressional heating, where the atmosphere is being squeezed a little bit by the arrival of a front from the north, and that compression actually helps to drive temperatures up a little bit. So you'll often find, especially here, that depending on the arrival time of a cold front, if it comes late in the day, the compressional heating effect before a front can give temperatures a big old spike just before it gets here. So we're looking for 95 on Saturday, which would be, and I need to dig into some of the records, but it could be a record tying or record-breaking heat for us. We're not used to seeing mid-90s this late into October, right?
Yeah.
We're now past the latest triple-digit day in history, too, that happened a couple days ago in October of last year. So from here on out, our records are in the 90s for the rest of October, and even some days in November and December, the record highs are in the 80s. So mid-90s, yeah, it may sound hot, and it may sound like not that different
miserable
from what we've had lately, but mid-90s as we get deeper into October is record-breaking territory. So we get that temperature spike here Saturday, a little drop in temperatures for Sunday, so a few degrees, no big deal. Yeah. And then the temperatures start to rebound again, heading back into the mid-90s Monday, and depending on the arrival time of that front on Tuesday, if the front comes in the morning, Tuesday may not get out of the 80s. If the front comes around the middle of the day, we may about reach 90. If the front doesn't come until Tuesday evening, we may have to bump up those Tuesday temperatures, but it does look like you'll start to feel the bigger effects of the temperature drop by next Wednesday that drop us down to 87. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, why are you making a big fuss out of going from 90 to 87?
87.
Yeah, it's because we think that this may be the sign of more persistent temperatures in the 80s. So it's not the one-day thing that we're focused in on as much because we may avoid the 90s tomorrow. It's more the fact that we think that next Wednesday may be the beginning of
fall.
More consistent relief. I know it's still not going to feel like fall, though. People are wondering when Texas 70s fall and 60s would feel more like fall. But it's a sign of something. We mentioned the lack of rain, though, with these fronts. We got a mini 10% rain chance Saturday. Saturday's been trending drier the last few days, which is not what we want to hear. And then the rain chances here for next Tuesday and Wednesday don't look particularly impressive either, but it's something.
Yeah. Well, Nick, we're talking about cold fronts, but honestly, here in Central Texas, the people who do feel the cold fronts are the Hill Country residents. Why is this? Remind us why is that?
Yeah, we all feel the cold fronts, but typically the Hill Country has cooler temperatures because they're higher in elevation. Usually, at least in the lower levels of the atmosphere, the higher in elevation you go, the cooler the air gets, until you get to a certain point where the air temperatures start to rise again, which is a discussion for another day. So that means that those with higher elevation, like in the Hill Country, get cooler earlier. They have the cooler daytime highs. They have the cooler nighttime lows purely because of elevation. And then, of course, the farther north you get cooler as well. Just like as you drive up to the Dakotas, you're getting cooler just because you're heading farther north, not necessarily because of elevation. So it's not like the Hill Country feels the cold fronts more than we do. We'll all feel them. A 10-degree drop in Austin, 10-degree drop or so in the hill country is a decent cold front, but they're starting with lower temperatures than we are, and then dropping 10 degrees too. So we may all feel a similar temperature change, but they're starting from a lower high temperature than we are in the metro because of the elevational factor. And then once you come off of the hill country into the Austin metro, if you have a westerly wind, remember I mentioned that compressional heating we can get with cold fronts?
That's bringing that hot wind.
Yeah, so when the wind comes down off the hill country into the metro, if it's right out of the west, that drying nature of that wind coming down from a higher elevation, getting down into more of a valley area, can also help to boost the temperatures too, which is another reason that we're often hotter in Austin under certain circumstances than the hill country, but we often are just because of elevation alone. So that's why the hill country, especially the last few days, have had highs in the 80s, where we've been in the 90s in the metro, and their nights have been more consistently in the 50s, and we haven't had any 50s
or
at
60s.
Camp Mabry yet.
Yeah.
We've had just those 60s. Now, there's also a difference between Austin's Camp Mabry site, which is more urbanized, versus the airport, which is more out in the open, a little bit lower down too, and they can radiate out the heat a little bit more at the airport. So sometimes you can get a 5 to 10 degree difference between Austin's Camp Mabry site
and the airport,
which is super interesting sometimes because you can get a freeze at the airport in the middle of winter, and then at Camp Mabry it's down to 40. So when we're forecasting the numbers that you see on our 7-day, we're forecasting for Austin's Camp Mabry, and then we're comparing our forecast to Camp Mabry too to see how well and how accurate we are. But we know that there are areas even not far away from Austin's Camp Mabry that can cool off more, heat up more. So there's all sorts of microclimates here in Central Texas that we're aware of.
And Nick, another thing that we've been talking about specifically that has to do with October is that October seems to be the second stormiest month, and has history of flooding, but we didn't see that this year. What do you think is the reason for that?
Well, the reason is because of the dominant high pressure ridge overhead that leads to sinking air that prevents and pushes the storm track away from us. That is not something that is usually in place in October. That's more of a midsummer thing. But we've had it over us in October, keeping the storms away and keeping us dry. And of course, as we look at we're now halfway through October, we're running out of time to make October a wet month. You mentioned it's usually our second wettest month of the year. So that's that's rain that we usually count on. No money here. Just rain that we usually count on in October. So to go the first 2 weeks of the month with no rain, we're tied in the top 10 for the driest Octobers with a bunch of other years that have also had no rain through the first 2 weeks of the month. Now, you can see on our article here, we do dive into somewhat of the extended rainfall forecast. I'll tell you, though, that since I published this article, and I don't know if we can go back to the weather graphics real quick, the extended rainfall outlook is no longer looking wetter than normal that it had looked last night and this morning.
That's a quick change.
And it was only leaning slightly wetter than normal, and now it's back to leaning near normal. But here's the thing. Near normal in October is still wetter than we've been all month.
Yeah.
So we would take near normal in a heartbeat just to get back to normal, or just to get back to what is a typical October wet pattern. And then from a temperature perspective, continuing to see the warmer than normal outlook here. So this is the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook that takes us almost through the very end of the month, but not quite there.
So we are looking at a warmer than normal rest of October.
Yeah.
We're still not looking at like any flood or anything
Not
like
yet.
that. Hopefully it doesn't come a month late because I want a fun Thanksgiving month.
And that's
flooded.
the thing is that we'll go from these stretches of super dry weather to stormier patterns that linger for a bit.
And that's what kind of it looked like earlier this summer, right?
Yeah, back in July, we went from being exceptionally dry to 2 weeks of wet weather, and that of course led to the historic flooding that we had. So Not seeing any signs of that coming anytime soon. And of course, barely any rain coming anytime soon as well. But on KXAN.com, under the weather and traffic tab, click on weather blog. We've got this story here. And what we're going to do, because we're first warning you about something that's sort of at the fringes of our 7-day, as I'll actually keep updating this for another day or so before we pivot the forecast to our main weather story, since this is more distant, more in the long term than the short term, sort of day 6 and 7 of our 7-day. So keep checking back there as we make the adjustments. But I wanted to give you something to look forward to, the potential for a little bit more heat relief in sight.
A little bit of temperature drops, not too much, but just a little.
Not as much as we would want. Sure.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Nick. That article that Nick has written is on our website, KXAN.com. You can find it on the homepage pretty easily. Nick, where can people watch videos like Nick's First Warning or other KXAN originals?
Yeah, KXAN Plus, of course, is our streaming app for your smart television. We are on Apple TV. We're on Roku, Fire Stick, and Samsung TVs too, I think.
Yeah,
I think
you
all
knocked
of those
them all.
places.
There you go. We have a cool little setup video too.
Yeah.
Kristen showing you how to download it. So it's completely free. You can find it on any app store, on any streaming platform that you have. But we are also still available on social media, our website, and our mobile app.
You know, I was on our KXAN Plus app just the other day.
Ooh.
I was scrolling through the various live streams that we have because we've got various live streams all at once.
Yeah.
And I was trying to check out the ACL crowd before I went down.
That's
so
a
to see
cool
how
one.
much it was building. And we had the stream from Zilker Park up there. And I was like, oh, there's too many people. I got to get going.
I was looking at that, and in the morning it was empty.
Yeah.
Midday it was a little crowded. By nighttime, you couldn't even see the floor.
I know. But anyway, so there's a lot of good features there, and we keep tweaking and adjusting and adding new stuff. So please check it out.
Yes. Thanks for joining me, Nick, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me.